Hi everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. In this video, we're going to talk about this upcoming Super Bowl. And you don't have to know anything about football. You don't need to know these teams, nothing. We're not going to be talking about sports. We're going to be talking about symbolism. And before I get into it, if you're somebody that thinks that this kind of thing is silly, it doesn't make sense to you, then feel free to watch something else. But if you put something in the comments that's mocking or rude or condescending, you're going to be blocked because I don't need to take it. There's this group of people that think that when there's a sign, it has to be magical. It has to be supernatural. Only then does it qualify as a sign, or only then can the Lord relay a message that he wants his children to receive. And I'm not in that camp. Whenever you have a large event, it doesn't matter if it's a natural disaster. It doesn't matter if it's like some historic moment. It doesn't matter if it's a sporting event like this. The Lord can use those times and those opportunities to send a message for those that will receive it. And not everybody will, but there are some people there that are in tune with the Spirit. And so that's why I'm looking at this. When it comes to the Super Bowl, let me just share a couple things. Okay, so this is the Wikipedia article for Super Bowl. The Super Bowl is among the world's most watched single sporting events and frequently commands the largest audience among all American broadcasts during the year. This is what's important. If you have a bunch of eyeballs watching this one event, it's an opportunity. This is something that advertisers understand, obviously, and this is something that the Lord can use to condition his children for things that are coming up or whatever he wants to communicate. In this case, we're going to be looking at this from a second coming standpoint. And there's reason to believe that. I'll get into all that in just a minute. Continuing, it is second only to the UEFA Champions League final as the most watched annual club sporting event worldwide, and the 7 most watched broadcasts in American television history are Super Bowls. Commercial airtime during the Super Bowl broadcast is the most expensive of the year because of the high viewership, leading to companies regularly developing their most expensive advertisements for the broadcast and commercial viewership becoming an integral part of the event. The Super Bowl is also the second largest event for American food consumption behind Thanksgiving dinner. So that is kind of crazy. It's a big deal. In the United States, it's a big deal. There's this article, list of most watched television broadcasts in the United States. Of the 30 most watched broadcasts, 22 are Super Bowls, 4 are news events, 3 are primetime television programs, and 1 is a non-football related sports event. Though the Apollo 11 moon landing is the most watched television event in American history, it is technically considered a news event, meaning that Fox's live telecast of Super Bowl 57 in 2023 holds the record for the largest average viewership of any live single network U.S. television broadcast, with 115.1 million viewers. Last year, a record was broken. So they have a table here. You have the Apollo 11 moon landing in 1969. And then after that, you have the Super Bowl from last year. It's a big deal. You have a lot of people watching. You have their attention. It's a prime time to send a message, whether you're a advertiser or whether you're the Lord, for people that are in tune with these things. Okay, so I actually did a video last year, just before that broadcast or before that game. Here I modified the Chiefs logo to NJ because the title of the video is Super Bowl 57, More Than Just a Game, New Jerusalem versus America. And I did that because of the symbolism. So, okay, so let's get back to this. So what we have going on here this year is we have the Kansas City Chiefs on the right in this picture versus the San Francisco 49ers. And it's going to be played in Las Vegas. So let's talk about these three locations: Kansas City, San Francisco, and Las Vegas. Let's go to the map. Okay. So actually, no. The first time that this came on my radar, or even started thinking about this, was back in 2020. It was around that time that I think a lot of people started thinking about the second coming, just because of everything that happened that year. There were all these different like second coming timeline videos that were coming on YouTube, produced by members of the church. And it was just like, it felt like it was a very pivotal year. Like a lot of people got turned on to the idea of the second coming. Now, remember, it was an election year. And so this was the year that Trump lost the election. And I know that there's more that could be said about that. I have to be careful what I say. But it was a very, very, very divisive year. You had the pandemic that took off that year. You had, in the United States, you had different movements / protests that were going on. It was just a chaotic year. It was the year that the missionaries were called home. It was the year that the temples were closed. There's never been a year like 2020. Now, this Super Bowl took place before the pandemic really hit the United States and before everything shut down. That was like in March. So this was in February. Okay. It was already in the news. It was starting to kind of pick up steam, but it hadn't really closed things in the United States at this point. So what you had that year, this election year, while Trump was in office and everybody was losing their minds over Trump, and there was all this polarization, you had a team from Kansas City and a team from San Francisco. I was watching some other YouTube channel that had to do with politics and secret combinations and stuff like that. And I think it was after the Super Bowl, they pointed out how this was a very fitting combination of teams for that year. The reason why is because, you know, we're all familiar with electoral maps. In fact, maybe I should pull that up. When we look at an electoral map of the United States, this is what we see. In the red, these are areas that typically hold traditional moral values, and areas in blue do not. Areas in blue tend to be centered around urban areas, like highly densely populated areas. And those locations typically aren't very friendly to religion. They're more secular, godless. They typically don't hold to traditional values, right? And there's probably no place more than San Francisco that would embody those values that are in opposition to traditional values and what we believe in the church. There's probably a few contenders: New York City, Las Vegas, and we're going to be talking about that. But San Francisco is pretty high up there. It might be number one. I guess it depends on who you ask. And so you have them that would represent that part of society. But then you have Kansas City that would more align with traditional values. It's a city that's in the heartland of the United States. And Kansas City, you should know, especially if you've been watching my channel, Kansas City is the metro area of the future New Jerusalem, whenever that's built, whenever the actual streets and everything are laid out. We already do have what I think is the beginning of it and what would be necessary for Christ to come. We have the Independence Visitor Center that was built to be part of the 24 Temple Complex. We also have a stake of Zion right here. And we know that each stake throughout the world is a city of holiness. So you have the people there. You have a temple in waiting there. The rest of it will come at some point. But the center place is in the Kansas City metro area, specifically in Independence, Missouri, so just east of downtown Kansas City. All right. Kansas City is also very close to the geographic center of the lower 48 states, or the continental United States, as it's also called. The geographic center is somewhere over here in Kansas. I can't remember exactly where, but it's kind of like in this area. more or less. So it's pretty close to Kansas City. Kansas City is essentially a city that's shared by two states. Whenever we're talking about Kansas City, we're typically referring to Kansas City, Missouri, which is where you have like the main downtown area and what you would think of as Kansas City. On the other side of the border in Kansas, you also have Kansas City, but it's Kansas City, Kansas. So it's a shared city, which is kind of similar to Jerusalem, which was shared between, it was on the border of Benjamin and Judah. And here we have Kansas City, that's also a border city and very close to the geographic center of the lower 48 states. So it's the heartland, right? So it was very fitting in that very divisive, political, chaotic year that you had those two teams that were playing, right? President Nelson was making a really big deal about 2020, specifically the April 2020 General Conference that would take place just a couple months after the Super Bowl, where a lot of different things happened. The introduction of the new church symbol, the Hosanna shout, the new proclamation. He said that it was a hinge point in the history of the church. So it's very fitting that the football team of the New Jerusalem played that year against a very, 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 very wicked city, San Francisco. And I'm not saying that if you're from San Francisco, you're absolutely wicked. I know that there's a lot of good people anywhere that you go. So hopefully you understand what I mean. Okay, so like I said, we're going to get into the details. Let's first look at the Super Bowls, how they've played out for the last few years. And then we're going to look at the Kansas City Chiefs and the details of that team, because there's additional details. The church is essentially connected with all three of these places: Kansas City, San Francisco, and Las Vegas. So we're going to talk about all three, okay? But we'll start with the Super Bowls and then talk about Kansas City after that. Okay, so 2020, Kansas City versus San Francisco, and Kansas City won. You could symbolically see that as a victory over evil and a good sign for the future, possibly a sign that the second coming is close. The next year, after the election, you had Kansas City that played the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, if you don't know what a buccaneer is, if English is not your first language, it's a pirate, okay? It's a robber of the seas. You know, we think about the Book of Mormon and the Gadianton robbers. Well, these are essentially Gadianton robbers of the sea, pirates, right? And what happened? Well, they won the Super Bowl. Or you could say they stole the Super Bowl. Just like maybe what happened, with, going from president to president. You could debate that, but I think a lot of people understand what happened. And so Kansas City lost. Okay. The next year, Kansas City did not go. It was the Los Angeles Rams versus the Cincinnati Bengals. But then last year in 2023, Kansas City was back. And this time they were playing the Philadelphia Eagles. And I did this video, right? Super Bowl 57, more than just a game. New Jerusalem versus America, ? And I said in that video that it would be very fitting if Kansas City won. I did this before the Super Bowl. I'm not saying that I predicted the Super Bowl, but I wasn't surprised by the outcome. Because just like how Kansas City beat San Francisco in 2020, it would also be fitting that the team of New Jerusalem would beat Philadelphia. Philadelphia is a city where the Declaration of Independence was signed, as well as the Constitution. The Constitution was ratified in Philadelphia. Here's the Independence Hall in Philadelphia, where it all happened. So this is a city that pretty well represents the United States. And their logo is the eagle, and the eagle is a symbol of the United States. What's interesting is when you look at Daniel's vision, right? In the book of Daniel, you have two things. You have King Nebuchadnezzar's dream of the statue, and then you have a corresponding vision that Daniel had it was the same thing, but it was in a different form. Instead of a statue, it was beasts. So the first beast was the Babylonian Empire, represented by a lion with wings. The second beast was a bear, which represented the Persian Median Empire or empires. Then after that, you had a leopard, I think with 4 wings, that represented the Greeks, or in other words, the Macedonian Empire. And then after that, there was another beast, but it wasn't equated with a specific animal. It was described as ferocious. It had the horns that came out, which represented essentially the nations that came out of that fourth beast, which was the Roman Empire, and it's the aftermath of the Roman Empire. But it wasn't equated with a specific beast. Although, when you look in the apocryphal book of Second Esdras, it actually identifies that beast as an eagle. And so, as we think about the second coming, as we think about Adam-ondi-Yamin, when Christ assumes the kingdom, we know that we're going to see the downfall of nations, including, as good as it has been, the United States, along with all the other all the other nations. They're all going to come under Christ's control. And so, yeah, what happened was Kansas City, they beat the Philadelphia Eagles. Well, now here we are in 2024, and now it's Kansas City versus the 49ers again. But this time, it's going to be in Las Vegas. Las Vegas has the nickname Sin City. So you have one very, very wicked city playing a team from a very good place, a place of traditional values, in in a city that rivals itself for wickedness, Las Vegas. So it's almost like everything's been heightened. It's more extreme this time. It's very interesting. And again, I'm not going to be surprised. I'm not predicting it, but I won't be surprised if Kansas City wins because of the symbolism that is intended and how the Lord may have influenced these things. Okay. So, okay. At this point, I also want to point out, it's kind of weird. What you have was those first 2 Super Bowls with the Chiefs were played in Florida. Okay. So those 2 Super Bowls were played on this very far extreme of the country, like, on the eastern part of the United States, Florida. And then these last 2, the one last year and the one this year, the last one was in Arizona, and then this one is in Las Vegas, which are western cities. Okay, here's Phoenix down here, and then here's Las Vegas over here. So so basically all 4 of these Super Bowls have happened in like the southern part of the country. The first 2 in the southeast, the second 2, the first 2 in the southeast, and then the last 2 in the southwest. So we're talking about like the entire. It's almost like it's like a bracket of the entire United States, which I feel like that's very fitting. And I guess I should bring this up too, really quick. No, I'll bring that up later when we talk about Las Vegas, when we talk about the location. We have a lot to talk about when it comes to the location. Okay. So let's get into the Chiefs. Okay. So first of all, it's interesting that Kansas City, it has this kind of like theme of royalty when it comes to the team names and the mascots and stuff. So you have the Kansas City Chiefs. A chief is essentially a leader. It's like a tribal leader or king. It's someone who's in charge, right? That's what a chief is. You also have in Kansas City the Kansas City Royals, which is a professional baseball team, right? And the logo, it has a crown because they're the Royals, right? They also had what is now the Sacramento Kings, but they used to be the, come on, right here. Between 1972 to 1985, it was the Kansas City Omaha slash, okay, so that had like two names, Kansas City Omaha, and then later just the Kansas City Kings. In 1975, the club became simply the Kansas City Kings. Okay, so they're no longer there, but they were, and right now they're in Sacramento, and they kept the name the Kings, but it started in Kansas City, right? You also have a few other teams. You have what was like a league for African Americans, and they were called the Kansas City Monarchs, and they had, a crown on top of a baseball, of course. And I don't know if this is like the same team, if it just like changed names. So you had the Kansas City Royal Giants, which was also an African American team. And what's interesting is that, so you have Kansas City with like all this royalty imagery, crowns and kings and whatever. And that's something that it shares in common with Salt Lake. In a sense, well, just because Salt Lake has its professional soccer team, which is Real Salt Lake, named after Real Madrid, but ironically with the colors of Barcelona. Those two teams are huge rivals. I learned all about that when I went on my mission to Spain. I went to the Spain-Barcelona mission. So you have this kind of like abomination team in Salt Lake that combines the two, and they're called Real Salt Lake. Real is royal in Spanish. So that's just an interesting thing. On the Kansas City side, you may or may not know this, but the head coach is Andy Reid. Okay. And it turns out he's a member of the church. The head coach of the team of New Jerusalem is a member of the church. Andrew Walter Reid, born March 19th, 1958, is an American football coach who is the head coach for the Kansas City Chiefs of the National Football League, or NFL. Reid was previously head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles from 1999 to 2012. That is kind of interesting. We were just talking about the Eagles. So we have this coach that used to be over the Eagles, or you could say symbolically speaking, over the United States, and then switching to the New Jerusalem. It's almost like he's a symbol of this, working through the United States, the Lord working through the United States. But then when the second coming happens, now it's New Jerusalem. Okay. Now look at this. He is the only NFL coach to win 100 games and appear in 4 consecutive conference championships with 2 different franchises. So he's kind of, I guess, an exceptional coach. And then at the bottom, I don't think I have anything else here. It took me a while to get this video ready, by the way. Personal life. Reid is married with 5 children, 3 sons and 2 daughters. Reid and his family are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. You can't make this stuff up. You can't make it up. After everything that we were just talking about, this is crazy. It's too perfect. Again, if you make fun of this, if you say something snide in the comments, you're done. I'm going to block you. I don't put up with it. Okay. I'm not saying that you have to believe it, but I do ask that you be respectful. Okay. And not make me out to be like a crazy person because I'm seeing these things that just fit in so perfectly together. Okay. So now let's talk about San Francisco. Have a lot to say about San Francisco. First, we're going to talk about what San Francisco is known for, some not so flattering things, and then we're going to talk about the name of the 49ers, because if you don't know, it has to do with the gold rush back in 1849. There was a big gold rush. A lot of people came from all over the place to go to California to try and find gold, to mine gold. So we're gonna talk about San Francisco today, the state of the city and what it's known for, and then we're going to talk about its history. And then after that, we'll move on to Las Vegas. Okay, so there's a few things to know that you probably already do know about San Francisco. San Francisco is very well known for the hippie movement, for one. Okay. This is an article called History of the Hippie Movement, 1967. On January 14th, 1967, the outdoor human be-in, nice, human be-in in San Francisco popularized hippie culture across the United States, with 30,000 hippies gathering in Golden Gate Park. The Monterey Pop Festival from June 16th to June 18th introduced the rock music of the counterculture to a wide audience and marked the start of the quote-unquote Summer of Love. Okay, later, regarding this period of history, the July 7th, 1967 Time magazine featured a cover story entitled, quote, The Hippies, quote unquote, The Hippies, the Philosophy of a Subculture. The article described the guidelines of the hippie code. Quote, do your own thing, wherever you have to do it, and whenever you want. Drop out, leave society as you have known it, leave it utterly, blow the mind of every straight person you can reach, turn them on, if not to drugs, then to beauty, love, honesty, fun, end quote. All right, San Francisco. It is estimated that around 100,000 people traveled to San Francisco in the summer of 1967, which is very interesting because later on, before we talk about Las Vegas, we're going to talk about the gold rush, how all these people flocked to California, but, it really impacted the future of San Francisco, obviously. But how you have all these people that come for worldly things to this location, both in the past and now in the 1960s. Okay. The media was right behind them, casting a spotlight on the Haight-Ashbury district and popularizing the hippie label. With this increased attention, hippies found support for their ideals of love and peace, but were also criticized for their anti-work, pro-drug, and permissive ethos. Misgivings about the hippie culture, particularly with regard to drug abuse and lenient morality, fueled the moral panics of the late 1960s. Okay, so hippies. This is a recent article. Where's the date? This is from the 6th of December of 2023. San Francisco faces deadliest year for drug overdoses due to rise of fentanyl. So they have that going for them right now. This is from Hoover Institution, which is a think tank out of Stanford University. Why San Francisco is nearly the most crime-ridden city in the U.S. San Franciscans face about a 1 in 16 chance each year of being a victim of property or violent crime, which makes the city more dangerous than 98% of U.S. cities, both small and large. To put this in perspective, Compton, California, the infamous home of drug gang turf wars, in which today remains more dangerous than 90% of all U.S. cities, is almost twice as safe as San Francisco. Nice. Very nice. Okay. Here we go this is from CNBC. These are the 10 wealthiest cities in the world. 3 of them are in the U.S. So in the number 1 spot is New York. After that, it's Tokyo, Japan. And then number 3 is the Bay Area. I'm sure most people know what that is, but San Francisco, you have San Francisco proper, you have like the suburbs and stuff, but then you have this like wider populated area. I don't think that these would, like down here, I don't think these would be considered suburbs of San Francisco, like San Jose. But you have like this massive populated area right here known as the Bay Area because of this bay right here. So anyway, it's saying that this area is 3rd in the world for wealth. And then also from CNBC, the 15 U.S. cities with the highest cost of living. San Francisco isn't number 1, but it is number 3 after New York, specifically Manhattan, and Honolulu, Hawaii. And then after that, you have San Francisco. Okay, so we got The hippie movement that started there so far. We have drugs, we have crime. It's also one of the wealthiest places, or I guess you could say most material places in the United States and the world. And then we have, Time Magazine. The 10 cities with the highest LGBT percentage in the U.S. The San Francisco metropolitan area has a higher percentage of adults who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender than any other city in the country, a new survey found. Gallup's poll of the 50 largest metropolitan areas in the U.S. found that 6.2% of San Franciscans identify as LGBT, which is 2.6 percentage points higher than the national average. The city named the gay capital of the U.S. by Life magazine in 1964, has a long history of a politically active LGBT community. The other high-ranking cities in the Gallup survey included Portland, Oregon, Austin, Texas, New Orleans, Louisiana, Seattle, Washington, Boston, Massachusetts, Salt Lake City, right? And that wasn't always the case. This is a more recent phenomena. It's not the Salt Lake City that I initially grew up in. Salt Lake City, Utah, Los Angeles, California, Denver, Colorado, and Hartford, Connecticut. But San Francisco has the highest percentage. What else? This is from KQED. How the Church of Satan was born in San Francisco. And of course, you have the famous Anton LaVey. The Bay Area has long been associated with countercultural movements, whether it was the Beats of the 1950s, the hippies of the 1960s, or the Black Panthers of the 1970s. But often overlooked is that long tradition of local subcultures. Okay, but often overlooked in that long tradition of local subcultures is the emergence of America's first official satanic church, which was founded right here in San Francisco. Okay, yeah, the United Nations, the formation of the United Nations. Okay, representatives of 50 nations met in San Francisco, April to June of 1945, to complete the Charter of the United Nations. Later, the United Nations came into existence on October 24th, 1945, after 29 nations had ratified the Charter. And I don't think that took place in a single location. From what I can tell, I think it came in like one by one, like one nation by another nation until you had the 29. But the charter was completed in San Francisco. Okay, so hopefully that cements in your mind the type of city that is, and the team that's going to be played. And that's not saying anything obviously about the individual players or anybody that works for the 49ers. And it's not condemnation on every single individual that lives there. There's obviously good people there. We have a temple pretty near there in Oakland, which is just right across the way on the other side of the bay, I think, right? Let me turn on temples really quick. Let's see. Temples, here we go. Yeah. So here's San Francisco, here's Oakland, and the Oakland temple is right here. Okay. Turn temples back off for now. Okay, so again, let's just circle back around. So we're talking about a big city from the Midwest, a place of traditional values. And then you have this over here that represents the exact opposite of that, in a very wealthy place, a very wicked place. And they'll both be playing in almost equally. Well, I don't know which one would be worse, but you have both of them playing in Sin City, aka Las Vegas. Okay, so let's start talking about the 49ers and their name. In case you don't know much about this, we're going to go to Britannica. California Gold Rush. California Gold Rush, rapid influx of fortune seekers in California that began after gold was found at Sutter's Mill in early 1848 and reached its peak in 1852. According to estimates, more than 300,000 people came to the territory during the gold rush. In 1848, John Sutter was having a water-powered sawmill built along the American River in Coloma, California, approximately 50 miles or 80 kilometers east of present-day Sacramento. On January 24th, his carpenter, James W. Marshall, found flakes of gold in a stream bed. Sutter and Marshall agreed to become partners and tried to keep their find a secret. News of the discovery, however, soon spread, and they were besieged by thousands of fortune seekers. With his property overrun and all his goods and livestock stolen or destroyed, Sutter was bankrupt by 1852. So that's nice. Obviously, not everybody that rushed out there, it was like a bad person, but it is going to attract people that are driven by money and wealth and material things, right? From the east, prospectors sailed around Cape Horn or risked disease, hiking across the Isthmus of Panama. The hardiest took the 2,000-mile or 3,220 kilometer overland route, on which cholera proved a far greater killer than the Native Americans. By August 1848, 4,000 gold miners were in the area, and within a year, about 80,000 49ers, as the fortune seekers of 1849 were called, had arrived at the California gold fields. By 1853, their numbers had grown to 250,000, although it was estimated that some 2 billion in gold was extracted. Few of the prospectors struck it rich. The work was hard, prices were high, and living conditions were primitive. The mass influx gave rise to numerous cities and towns, with San Francisco gaining particular prominence. Okay, so therefore you have the San Francisco 49ers, the football team. The gold rush was credited with hastening statehood for California in 1850. Okay, so we had this phenomena where gold was discovered and it attracted people that wanted to become rich, fortune seekers, as they're called in this article, right? People who may have that as their top priority. Not everybody. I mean, we all have to make a living. We all have to survive. So you'd have to look at each individual, and only the Lord can judge. But that was the primary motivator for these people to move to California. I wanted to read just a few things from church leaders and some stuff that I found on the church website. So first I want to read this. This is from Sterling W. Sill. He was assistant to the Council of the 12 Apostles. The name of the talk is Famine. This is the April 1956 General Conference. Okay. One of the most thrilling events that has ever happened in the world came as a part of the fulfillment of this prophecy when, in the early spring of 1820, God the Father and his Son Jesus Christ reappeared upon this earth to open this greatest and final gospel dispensation. And God has placed in the hands of men 3 great volumes of new scripture, outlining in every detail the simple principles of the gospel, that all men might be fed the bread of life and be enabled thereby to work out their individual personal exaltation. But it is possible to perish even in the presence of plenty. Okay, so now we're starting to talk about, we're going to get into this metaphor of the 49ers, okay? But it is possible to perish even in the presence of plenty. Think about worldly lifestyles. Think about people that give too much priority to wealth and material things over God, right? It's essentially idolatry. Okay. In the early gold rush days of this country, many men lost their lives trying to cross what was known as the Great American Desert. Later, when their bodies were recovered, it was found that many of them had died in close proximity to the water holes. With just a little additional knowledge, they would have been able to have saved their own lives. This experience of the 49ers has its spiritual counterpart in our day. Emerson indicated this possibility when he said, quote, "On the brink of the waters of life and truth, we are miserably dying. Sometimes we are furthest away when we are closest by. We stand on the brink of an ocean of power, but each of us must take the step that would bring him there." And I think that's the end of the quote. They don't actually put quotations on this. "It is always a pathetic tragedy when that step is not taken." So this is really interesting how you can live in this life. You can do really well for yourself. You can succeed, whether it's wealth or fame or power or attention or whatever it is that you're going for. Not everybody necessarily wants to be rich, but there's other things that they prize. And when you play the game of life, like that's great, but are you dying when you have the gospel right there, in your backyard, at your neighbor's house, in your neighborhood, right? You have living water near to you, but you're more focused on the things of this world. So that's interesting. Let's go on to this. This is an institute manual called Church History in the Fullness of Times, student manual. This is chapter 27, Establishing a Refuge in the Desert, in a section called Here We Will Stay. Even though the saints were efficiently governed, there were several challenges in establishing a strong refuge. Deseret. Establishing a refuge in Deseret. Even though the saints were efficiently governed, there were several challenges in establishing a strong refuge in Deseret. If you don't know church history, originally what the saints wanted to call the land, the state, was Deseret, but Congress didn't agree, so they named it Utah after the Ute Indians. In contrast to the previous winter, the winter of 1848 to 1849 was very severe in In contrast to the previous winter, the winter of 1848 to 49 was very severe and created serious needs among the people. Now remember, they had come to the Salt Lake Valley in 1847, in July 24th, 1847. So they get through that winter, and then the second winter is this one. The winter of 1848 to 49 was very severe and created serious needs among the people. It snowed frequently, and the snow remained on the ground throughout the entire winter, making it difficult for the cattle to feed. Heavy snowfall in the mountains made it difficult to gather wood. Excessive cold and violent winds often made life miserable for the settlers. Food was again so scarce that people ate wolves, hawks, crows, dogs, and animals that had been dead for some time. The council sponsored a contest to eliminate the, quote, wasters and destroyers, quote unquote, wasters and destroyers that were diminishing the little food supply there was. Numerous predatory animals were killed in this hunt. The Brethren also instituted a voluntary rationing and community storehouse system. Those with surplus food were asked to give it to their bishop to be divided among the needy. The harshness of the winter, constant hunger, a meager harvest the previous year, and the pull of what was called California fever, quote unquote, created some discontent, and a few settlers loaded their wagons and prepared to leave in the spring. During those trying times, President Heber C. Kimball was moved upon to prophesy, quote, "Never mind, boys, in less than 1 year, there will be plenty of clothes and everything that we shall want sold at less than St. Louis prices." Talking about St. Louis, Missouri, end quote. President Brigham Young also encouraged the saints, quote, "God has appointed this place for the gathering of his saints, and you will do better right here than you will by going to the gold mines." Okay, so you had these people, there's gold in California and it's better there. It's not like here. But Brigham Young's like, no, this is the place. Stay here. All right, continuing. "We have been kicked out of the frying pan into the fire, out of the fire into the middle of the floor, and here we are, and here we will stay. As the saints gather here and get strong enough to possess the land, God will temper the climate, and we will build a city and a temple to the Most High God in this place. We will extend our settlements to the east and west, to the north and to the south, and we will build towns and cities by the hundreds, and thousands and thousands of the saints will gather in from the nations of the earth. We have the finest climate, the best weather, and the purest air that can be found on earth. There is no healthier climate anywhere. As for gold and silver and the rich minerals of the earth, there is no other country that equals this. But let them alone. Let others seek them. So like the 49ers, let others seek them, and we will cultivate the soil. So you had this this decision, join the 49ers, go to California, try and find gold. And we just read from Britannica that not many people became rich from doing that. So do that, or stay here and work and make a home for yourself and for others. All right, continuing. Most saints remained loyal to the cause. So not everybody, most, but not everybody. Most saints remained loyal to the cause and planted their seeds. As summer came, the prophets of God were vindicated. The Lord did temper the elements, and there was a bounteous harvest, enough to feed nearly 5,000 saints, nearly 5,000 saints who were already in the valley, and the 1,400 who immigrated during the summer. Moreover, an estimated 10 to 15,000 gold seekers, or in other words, 49ers, passing through Salt Lake City in both 1849 and 1850, provided an economic windfall for the saints. Merchant companies organized to haul goods to California learned upon reaching Salt Lake City that food, clothing, implements, and tools sent by ship had already reached the marketplace. They sold their goods to the saints at devalued prices rather than take an even heavier loss in California. The overland immigrants' wagons needed servicing and re-outfitting, thus providing employment to Mormon blacksmiths, wagonsmiths, teamsters, laundresses, and millers. The saints established ferries on the upper crossing of the North Platte, and on the Green and Bear rivers, which were used by the California-bound trains. Parties with empty wagons were sent out from Salt Lake to collect valuable items discarded along the route by those who had attempted to lighten their loads, so they could hurry faster to the gold fields of California. John D. Lee spent several days looking for a suitable stove for his family. He finally, quote, found one to his liking, a fine, large, premium range number 3, which would have cost more than $50 to purchase. On the way back, he started loading up with powder and lead, cooking utensils, tobacco, nails, tools, bacon, coffee, sugar, trunks of clothing, axes, and harness, end quote. Thus, the famous 1849 gold rush fulfilled the prophecies of Brigham Young and Heber C. Kimball and directly enabled the saints to survive in the Salt Lake Valley. So that's interesting because you have people that are going to California seeking riches, and it turns out that they have to get rid of some of their stuff while they're on their way. And as they're trying to get to California, they pay the saints to like help them fix up their wagons or repair things or whatever. And so it seems like the saints got the better deal than the 49ers. Now, undoubtedly, there were some 49ers that did strike it rich, but like we just read, not many did. And I think that's essentially the pattern of things. There's like a time during our lives and during this mortal life that you may not have everything that you want. Things may be uncomfortable. But later on, you do end up inheriting those things. Ultimately, it could be in life. I feel like that's happened to me in a few different ways. But ultimately, it's the saints that are going to inherit the earth, for example. You have everybody that lives here right now. We've built up cities and we have technology and stuff like that. When the second coming happens, those that are living a telestial lifestyle are not going to be here anymore. And some of them will have contributed to those things, but they're going to end up purely within our hands and those and everybody else that's in the millennium, everyone that's lived a terrestrial law and a celestial law. And then we'll continue from there. Does that make sense? And then ultimately, in the end, will inherit the entire earth if you're celestial. So I feel like there's like other stories out there that are like this, where things have fallen into the hands of the saints. I guess like you think about, for example, when Israel was conquering the land after wandering in the wilderness, he had these different people that lived there, and we learn in the Book of Mormon, Nephi says that had they been righteous, they wouldn't have been destroyed by Israel. If they had been righteous, then the Lord would have favored them, just like he favored Israel, but they weren't. And so their goods, the things that they had, fell to Israel and became the property and assets of Israel as they conquered the land. So I feel like there's many other times that like this kind of thing has happened. If you can think of any other times in the scriptures or just in history, in like church history, put it in the comments below. Okay, just a couple more things, and then we're going to talk about Las Vegas. Okay, this next one is from Our Heritage, A Brief History of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Chapter 6, Faith in Every Footstep, under a section called Mormon Battalion. While the Saints were in Iowa, United States Army recruiters asked church leaders to provide a contingent of men to serve in the Mexican War, which had begun in May 1846. The men who came to be called the Mormon Battalion were to march across the southern part of the nation to California and would receive pay, clothing, and rations. Brigham Young encouraged men to participate as a way to raise money to gather the poor from Nauvoo and to aid individual soldiers' families. Cooperating with the government in this endeavor would also show the loyalty of church members to their country and give them a justifiable reason to camp temporarily on public and Indian lands. Eventually, 541 men accepted their leader's counsel and joined the battalion. They were accompanied by 33 women and 42 children. That's kind of weird. I guess some of them took their families with them. After their discharge, many of the battalion members remained in California to work for a season. A number of them found their way north to the American River and were employed at John Sutter's sawmill when gold was discovered there in 1848, precipitating the famous California gold rush. But the Latter-day Saints, the Latter-day Saint brethren did not stay in California to capitalize on this opportunity for fortune. Their hearts were with their brothers and sisters struggling westward across the American plains to the Rocky Mountains. One of their number, James S. Brown, explained, quote, "I've never seen that rich spot of earth since, nor do I regret it, for there always has been a higher object before me than gold. Some may think we were blind to our own interests, but after more than 40 years, we look back without regrets. Although we did see fortunes in the land and had many inducements to stay. People said, 'Here is gold on the bedrock, gold on the hills, gold in the rills, gold everywhere, and soon you can make an independent fortune.' We could realize all that. Still, duty called. Our honor was at stake. We had covenanted with each other that there was a principle involved. For with us, it was God and his kingdom first." This is amazing. They're choosing between potential fortune and God in helping others. Continuing, "We had friends and relatives in the wilderness, yea, in an untried desert land, and who knew their condition. We did not. So it was duty before pleasure, before wealth. And with this prompting, we rolled out." These brethren knew clearly that the kingdom of God was of far greater worth than any material things of this world, and chose their course accordingly. So, when we look at this again, it's nothing against people that live in California or San Francisco who play for the team. It's just a symbol. It's like a play. It's like you're watching a play. You're watching an allegory where you have these two things that are coming to a head right now. You have people that are going the way of the world. They're going more and more that way. And then you have those that are coming closer and closer to Christ and his church and the gospel. It's a big showdown. And this is happening in Las Vegas. Las Vegas is a great symbol for just the world that we live in at large. It's so perfect. Okay, so now with that, let's start talking about Las Vegas. Okay, so let's do this. Let's go to Photoshop. Now, we've done the whole thing before. I've done videos about this before where we've compared the old world with the new world and how there seems to be this kind of like weird mirroring type effect where if you look at Europe, for example, you have Spain and Portugal right here. You have, which is kind of like the head of Europe. If you were to like say like if this was like an animal, this would be like the head, the Iberian Peninsula. And then you have Italy right here, which is shaped like a boot, right? So this is Europe. Those are some of the distinguishing features. When we look at the United States, there's something similar where you have this area over here, like New England and in this part of Canada, that would kind of correspond to Spain and Portugal. You have Michigan, which hangs down, but instead of being in the shape of a foot or a boot, it's in the shape of a hand or a mitten or whatever you want to call it, right? So you have something kind of interesting going on there. We all know the similarities between Salt Lake City and Jerusalem, where here you have Jerusalem right here. You have the Dead Sea, which is to the southeast, and then you have the Sea of Galilee, which is northeast, and then the two lakes are connected by the Jordan River. And Salt Lake City, if you turn it upside down, it matches Jerusalem. If now this is north and this is south, and then the Great Salt Lake is southeast of Salt Lake City, and Utah Lake, which would correspond to the Sea of Galilee, is northeast, and they're connected by a Jordan River, and it was named that way intentionally. But you have this similarity, right? We're getting to Las Vegas. This all ties into Las Vegas, so I have to set it up. Okay? So you have that. Furthermore, if you go beyond just Utah and you look at the West, you have something similar, okay? So if we're looking at the map on the left, you have Jerusalem, okay? If you go east, excuse me, if you go like slightly north and then to the east, you end up at where Babylon was, which was like in this area right here. So Babylon is right here. You look at Utah and Salt Lake City, you do something similar. You go north and to the east, and you come to Las Vegas. Las Vegas is, you could say that the modern day Babylon, not as far as like the capital of an empire, but maybe the capital of wickedness, if there was one. You might say that it's Las Vegas. Again, they take pride in the nickname Sin City. And you have all sorts of abominations to be found there. Drugs, and I'm not going to name them all. It's horrible. All right. And then beyond that, if we go back to Jerusalem, if you go beyond Babylon and you continue further east, you come to Persia, right? And you have, I think it's called Shusha. We've talked about the Shushan Gate of the Temple Mount. The Eastern Gate is called the Shushan Gate because for the Second Temple, because they named it that in honor of the Persians who allowed them to return after the Babylonian captivity to rebuild their temple. So they named that gate the Shushan Gate because it faced toward Shusha. So the Persian Empire could very well correspond with California and, the various cities here, whether you want to think of San Francisco or Los Angeles, I don't know. But you see another similarity there. Okay. When we go to Google Earth, I have this so you can see it a little bit better, but I wanted to do the side-by-sides first. Okay, so let's go over to the Middle East. So what you have is you have Jerusalem. In the north of Jerusalem, you have Lebanon. I'm pointing that out for later when we look at Utah. Okay. Lebanon is north of Israel. And then this blue line is the Euphrates River. And let's read just a little bit about the Euphrates River. If we go to the Bible dictionary, it says, an important river that rises in the mountains of Armenia and falls into the Persian Gulf, frequently called in Scripture the river. It provided a route of communication between east and west. It was the boundary of the land promised to the seed of Abraham. This boundary was reached in the time of David. And then later on at the bottom it says, on the banks of the Euphrates stood the great city of Babylon. Now this is important, okay? So you could equate the Euphrates River with the highway to Babylon, the highway to Babylon, okay? And you can see that here. These are the actual locations of where Babylon was, and then also Shush of the Persian Empire. But Babylon is right there on the banks of the Euphrates River, okay? So remember that. Now let's go over to Utah. And you have something very similar. What you have is, okay, so here's, instead of putting Salt Lake, I put Jerusalem so you could visualize it better. So you have Salt Lake / Jerusalem down here. And then you have another river. This time it's not the Euphrates, it's the Colorado River. And this one is actually like opposite. If we were to overlay the other map on this, it's going like the opposite direction, the opposite diagonal. But I think that the symbolism still works. And what's interesting is that you have Cedar City, which I feel like is kind of like Lebanon because of the cedars of Lebanon. So you have Cedar City up here, Lebanon. And then to the east, you have Babylon, Las Vegas, which is on the banks. I mean, not strictly on the banks, but it's on the banks of the Colorado River. The Colorado River goes through here. There's a reservoir. This is called Lake Mead. And whenever you drive from Vegas to Phoenix, you drive by here. I've done that like a billion times. Very familiar with this area. But everyone, when you go to Las Vegas, you know about Lake Mead. This is where the Hoover Dam is. You can see it right here. There's the Hoover Dam. Okay. But in this exercise that we're doing, this is essentially the Euphrates River. And you have Babylon / Las Vegas that is right on this, well, pretty close to this river. So to me, it's kind of striking, and out of all cities to represent wickedness in the scriptures, we're always referring to Babylon. Like Babylon is the epitome of the world. It's the epitome of wickedness. They don't use like Egyptian cities or Persian cities or Greek or Roman cities. Typically they just refer back to Babylon, So here we have the Super Bowl that's going to be taking place in what I feel corresponds to ancient Babylon, Las Vegas. And then you come over here and you can see how California pretty well lines up with Persia. Okay. There's a couple more things to look at. If we go back to Photoshop. Okay, so here's the United States. And I've done a video about this before. The United States is essentially, the way that I see it, it's kind of laid out like a big camp of Israel. And what I mean by that is when Israel was wandering in the desert, they had an order of march, like everybody marched according to their tribe. And then when they camped somewhere, they camped by tribe around the tabernacle. And it was like this. So you had Judah in the east, and Judah was the leader tribe of Zebulun and Issachar. Reuben was the leader of the south over Simeon and Gad. Ephraim was the leader of the west over Manasseh and Benjamin. And then Dan was the leader of the north over Naphtali and Asher. and the tabernacle was in the middle. Now, what's interesting is if you put the encampment of Israel over the United States, and this is from the church, one of the church's manuals, what you'll find is you have Kansas City right there in the middle, the site of the New Jerusalem. Okay, not only that, but when we look at where most members of the church live in the United States by state, I'll turn on a map that shows that. Well, they're over here. They're over here in the West, and they're not in California. They're not in Oregon or Washington. It's like in the middle of the West. You know, you could say that this is the Midwest, is Utah, but it's not. It's the middle of the Western United States. It's Utah, and that's where most members of the church in the United States live. But what about Jews? Jews primarily live in the East, in like New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Maryland. So the East is where most of the Jews in the United States live. So you have this distribution of Ephraim primarily in the West, and then Judah primarily in the East. And in the middle, you have New Jerusalem, the Kansas City area, Independence, Missouri. Okay, so this is all very, very interesting stuff. Okay, so let's go back here. Let's see, was there anything else I wanted to show from here? No. Okay, so let's go back to the browser. So Las Vegas, okay? New Jerusalem versus the world or worldly values, the height of the world, wealth, the pleasures of the world, whatever, in a Babylon city. Now, what you may or may not know is Las Vegas was essentially started by members of the church. We're looking at an article on the National Park Service's website, the Old Mormon Fort, birthplace of Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm going to read some of this. This is going to be a little bit redundant, but I'm going to read two parts because they cover slightly different things. Okay. John Steele, one of the first of the Mormon missionaries to arrive at what became the Las Vegas mission, wrote the above in his journal to recount the activities of the first Independence Day celebrations in 1855. I'm not going to read that. There's nothing really here. You can read that if you want. I'll put the link for this in the description box below. Continuing, the group arrived from Salt Lake less than 3 weeks before on June 14th, after being called by President Brigham Young to establish this mission to convert the nomadic Southern Paiute Indians to Mormonism and teach them new farming techniques. On the Old Spanish Trail between New Mexico and California, the Las Vegas Valley was an oasis in the desert. The Mormons wanted to establish a halfway station in the valley for travelers between Salt Lake City and the Pacific Coast. Let's take a look at that. So here's Salt Lake up here, right? Here's Las Vegas, and then here's the Pacific Coast. So it's not strictly halfway, but it is kind of a midway point. And today you have the interstate system, which includes I-15. If it'll show up, I turned on roads. Where is it? There we go. You see I-15 right here. You see like the little 15 icon. It goes up past Salt Lake up into Idaho. It actually goes through Idaho Falls and whatever, but it comes down here through the Salt Lake metro area, Ogden metro area, Salt Lake and Provo metro area, and then down here, and then it goes kind of it goes through St. George, and then it goes just a little bit through Arizona, and then it comes down here to Las Vegas, and then it continues on to Los Angeles right here. Okay. All right. Continuing. The area was particularly coveted for Mormon territorial expansion because it was located halfway between the Mormon settlements of southern Utah and the San the San Bernardino mission established in 1851 in Southern California. After the mission closed, the old Las Vegas Mormon fort served as a ranch, resort, and cement testing facility. Today, a small portion of the original fort, part of the bastion, the underground foundation of the ranch, and remnants of the testing lab remain to tell the story of the origins of Las Vegas. So let's take a look at that really quick. I found it. Let's turn roads off. Okay, I found it on the map. Let's look at the street view or the photo bubble. So here it is right here. Let's go to the little photo bubble thing so you can see that. So this is essentially the beginnings of Las Vegas. This right here, built by members of the church. Isn't that interesting? Okay, let's exit Street View. But not only that, let's turn on the roads again so you can see it. Okay, so you see this road right here. This road is called Las Vegas Boulevard. And do you know what Las Vegas Boulevard is? Las Vegas Boulevard is also known as the Strip. When you think of Las Vegas, sometimes you might think of Fremont Street, which is kind of like, sometimes I think people confuse that with the Strip or the main Strip. But all the like really, really big casinos are on Las Vegas Boulevard. You know, you have Caesar's Palace, Mandalay Bay, Treasure Island, Encore, the Wynn, Venetian, all that stuff. So if you can see that right now, it's kind of small, but you see the place marker right there. It's just right up north on the Strip, on the east side of Las Vegas Boulevard. And the Super Bowl is going to be right here. This is Allegiant Stadium. So this Super Bowl is going to be played not too far from the original Mormon fort that led to the establishment of Las Vegas. Isn't that interesting? We also have the two temples. So there's the one temple that's already in operation. It's one of the earlier temples. I can't remember if it was built like in the 80s or something like that. But you have the Las Vegas temple, which is one of my very favorite temples. I love the Las Vegas temple. The grounds are beautiful. The temple itself is beautiful. And it has like this view of the Strip when you're there. You can see the Strip in the distance. You can see the skyline. And I've always felt every time that I've gone there that it's so surreal to be where the house of God is, and then looking out into the valley and seeing this very, very worldly city, Sin City. It's crazy. And by the way, I love Las Vegas. I have family that lives there. I have friends that are there, friends from when I was in the singles ward, and some newer friends. This is the first big city that I went to outside of Utah when I was young. And when I went here, I was just like, it just blew me away. Because, yes, the Strip is really bad. There's bad things here, but it's also very beautiful. These casinos are amazing. The insides, like there's some areas that are just immaculate and almost like temple-like in themselves. Very expensive, and a lot of work was done. You have a lot of like really incredible craftsmanship. You do have the bad things, but you also have some good. You have some good. The shows are pretty incredible. There are shows that you can see that are not bad. A lot of times we'll come over here to Circus because they have free shows for kids upstairs. There's like a arcade and things like that. And I think it's like every 15 minutes there's a show. So there's a lot of cool things here. And I'm not familiar with this building. It's been a while since, what is this? Hilton? Rockford, Conrad? Okay, whatever. That's a new building that I don't recognize. There's Trump Tower right here. That's kind of fitting too. as the Super Bowl is about to happen. And we had that Super Bowl the last year of his presidency. And now here we are again in an election year. So don't get me wrong. I love Las Vegas. I even love parts of the Strip. I think it's amazing, but I think everybody recognizes that it is what it is. It's on another level. It symbolizes wickedness and all types of sin that you can, commit. All right. So back to this. After the mission closed, we already read that. Let's skip down to the second part that I want to read. In the middle of the 19th century, the idea of manifest destiny, a phrase used to explain continental expansion by the U.S., was embraced by many American people, including the Mormons. They began an industrious campaign to colonize Utah and beyond, establishing hundreds of settlements throughout the West and Southwest. As part of this process, Brigham Young called on volunteers to create a Las Vegas mission, which would be strategically located alongside the Mormon Road, a portion of the old Spanish Trail between New Mexico and California, halfway between Mormon settlements of southern Utah and the San Bernardino Mission in Southern California. There were eventually 96 settlements that included Lehi, Provo, Payson, Nephi, Fillmore, Beaver, Parowan, and Cedar City. Meanwhile, the discovery of gold in California in 1848 made southern Nevada a corridor for westward immigrants and gold seekers. A gold seeker wrote in his diary on November 21st, 1849, about stopping at the Las Vegas Creek. Offering the only reliable supply of water for a 55-mile stretch along the Mormon Road, the Las Vegas Valley's springs were important for watering the mules, horses, and oxen of travelers crossing the region's harsh desert environment. With the opening of the San Bernardino settlement in 1851, there was an additional need for a way station at the Las Vegas Springs to provide supplies and rest. The mission the Mormons established as part of the church's westward expansion out of Utah became the first non-native settlement in the area, and the Mormons hoped to bring the American Indians into their flock. Although the Mormons occupied the site only from 1855 to 1858, it affected the development of what was to become southern Nevada. So, and I think, then we got Allegiant Stadium. So it continues. There's like more to this. It's just, when you take it all together, I feel like there really is a story here. Again, we've talked about the Chiefs and their relationship to, them being in the location of the New Jerusalem. The head coach is a member of the church. We've talked about the 49ers and San Francisco and the type of city it is, but also, and by the way, I'm sure most of you know, but Brigham Young's, I don't know how many but like his great grandson, Steve Young, he played for the 49ers. He was a very, very famous quarterback. Steve Young. Let's see what it says here really quick. Control F, Brigham Young. Young is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He is a great grandson of Brigham Young. So he played for the 49ers, It's just like how, no, I'm not going to go any more with the symbolism, but he played for the 49ers. That's just in case you didn't know that. Okay. Back to what we were reading. Or what were we talking? I got sidetracked. Oh yeah. So we talked about San Francisco, the type of city it is, and, things from the early church that had to do with the gold rush and all that stuff. Now we've talked about Las Vegas and how the church essentially started Las Vegas. I mean, it may have started anyway, who knows, but they had a hand in getting things started with Las Vegas. And today, Las Vegas has a pretty strong LDS community, so much so that in this recent conference, I think it was maybe 2 conferences ago, they announced a second temple for the Las Vegas area. I would have thought that they would announce it for down here, Henderson, because there's a lot of members of the church in Henderson. But no, it's actually completely opposite, the complete opposite end of the valley from Henderson, over here in the northwest. But probably someday there will be a temple in Henderson. Anyway, but now let's talk about where the game is going to be played in Allegiant Stadium. Okay. So the temple is over there against those mountains. The old Mormon fort is just over there, relatively close. Like when you zoom out really far, relatively close to where the Super Bowl is going to be played. Okay. Allegiant Stadium is a domed multi-purpose stadium located in Paradise, of all places, Nevada. Now, Paradise is I'll just read it here. Paradise is an unincorporated town and census designated place in Clark County. So, anyway, isn't that kind of interesting as we look forward to the second coming and how the earth is going to become a paradisiacal world once again? You have this Super Bowl that is going to be played in Paradise. My gosh. Located in Paradise, Nevada, southwest of adjacent Las Vegas. Opened in 2020, big year. It is the home field of the Las Vegas Raiders of the National Football League and the University of Nevada, Las Vegas Rebels college team. So even though Kansas City's not going to be playing the Raiders and certainly not the Rebels because they're a college team, you have this interesting imagery once again. Raiders, again, if English is not your first language, or even if it is, you've maybe never really thought of this. If you haven't seen the logo of the Raiders, or you're not, whatever. Raiders are another type of pirate. It's pirates. You have Buccaneers, you have Raiders. So the Chiefs lost to the Buccaneers in Florida, and now they're playing in the home stadium of the Raiders. Another pirate thing going on here. It's really interesting. It's not that it's just Sin City and Babylon. The stadium is the home of the Raiders. Man, it's all just like so compact, like all these like details. Okay. And then the Rebels, that's in reference to the Civil War. Let's see if they have the logo here. Control F. Logo. No. I'll just do UNLV Rebels logo. So it's essentially, I've never actually looked into this too much, but because he's wearing a gray hat, obviously, because they're called the Rebels, idiot. So basically it's like the Civil War. I want to be careful what I say. The South, okay? It's like a Southern soldier, essentially. A rebel. But if you just think about the word itself, rebel, that's not a good thing when it comes to the gospel. You don't want to be in rebellion to God. You don't want to be in open rebellion. So that's just another interesting thing. Okay. The stadium will host Super Bowl 58 in February 2024. And by the way, I don't think I said this, it's going to be next week on Sunday. The venue is located on about 62 acres of land west of Mandalay Bay at Russell Road. Russell. We have a prophet right now. His name is Russell M. Nelson. Isn't that what I said? You said next week. Well, sorry, this week on Sunday. This Sunday. Sorry. My Jenica in the background, she's correcting me. So Russell Road and Hacienda Avenue between Polaris Avenue and Dean Martin Drive, just west of I-15. At $1.9 billion, it is the second most expensive stadium in the world. Taxpayers shouldered $750 million of the cost of construction. Construction of the stadium began on November 13th, 2017, or in other words, just a few months before President Nelson became president of the church. And its certificate of occupancy was issued on July 31st, 2020. This may be another bookend. You have it, construction began back, well, no, maybe not so much a bookend, but just interesting dates. I'll just take note of the dates. Okay, was there anything else that I had about this? The first event at the stadium was a Monday night football game on September 21st, 2020, where the Raiders defeated the New Orleans Saints. So you had a game. Their first game was against the Saints. If we take a look at that on a symbolic level, you have pirates that fight the Saints and they win. Like there's this symbolism of, the Chiefs who lost to the Buccaneers. You have the Saints that lose to the Raiders. It's the way of the world right now. Satan, has a lot of power and the world keeps getting darker and darker. He's winning a lot of battles, especially in the year 2020. That was probably like the height of his power, I would say, because of what he was able to do. He was able to shut down all temples. Things are bad now, but the temples are open. They're reopened, and missionary work is going forward. I really think that 2020 was like the year of the height of his power, but we could see more. But anyway, in that year, the Raiders beat the Saints. The same year that the real Gadianton robbers beat the Saints and closed all the temples. Okay. And I can't remember, and it looks like that's it. Is that it? Las Vegas Raiders. Yeah, I'll just end it there. Okay. So these are the reasons why I'm interested in this Super Bowl. It's been a long time personally since I've watched football regularly. Like in my early marriage, back in the mid to late 2000s, I was watching football, pretty frequently. But then I just got, caught up with life, like trying to survive and work and school and all this stuff. And I've never really recovered. And I don't care to, because I feel like it's not worth my time personally. I'm not saying that it's wrong for you to watch football. As long as you do it in moderation and you don't, if it doesn't become your form of idolatry where you place so much priority on watching football. There's some people that are like, oh, there shouldn't be football, or you shouldn't watch it because it's on Sundays. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that I don't know, that's kind of complicated. Ultimately, no, but okay. I don't have anything else to say about that. But anyway, the one game that I have watched every year is the Super Bowl. And it's probably that way for a lot of different people. Some people watch it for the commercials or like the new, products that are announced in commercials or movies, or to see the first trailer of a movie. But for me, like I'm, mildly interested. So I watch it and it's fun. We have our snacks and food that we eat while we watch it. It is fun to watch it with family and friends, but I've been really interested these last few years just because of everything that we just talked about, starting with 2020 when it was Kansas City versus San Francisco. They beat them then. And by the way, now you should know that you are obligated to root for the Chiefs. You are obligated to want them to win, even if you're a 49ers fan. It's okay. You can still want the 49ers to win, but the symbolic implications, if they do, is probably not good. If this is even a thing, but it's fun to think about. I don't think it's arbitrary. I think that this resonates with a certain number of people, even people that don't watch this video. I think other people, like I said, this wasn't even originally my idea. I was watching a YouTube channel. It wasn't even members of the church, and they were like looking at the Super Bowl this way back in 2020. So it does resonate with people, and people do think this way, and messages are received in these type of things. So I don't know. I'm going to watch it. I hope you do too, just because of everything that we've talked about, and maybe we can talk about it after it's done. But again, just a reminder, the team of New Jerusalem playing the team of a very, very wicked city in an almost equally wicked city. So it's going to be interesting. Okay, that's going to be it for this one. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.